Europe is facing a sudden new surge.
There's some doubt about whether the new restrictions will be enough to stop the spike.
Politicians are frankly struggling to cope
with steep rises in coronavirus infections.
From Russia to Germany, France, Spain and the UK, the stats tell a similar and alarming story. Europe's second wave is a monster. And while the continent's health services are battle-hardened from the first wave...
What we see now is very different. The number of cases is high, but the number of deaths is low. And that's a very important progress.
The scale of the challenge ahead still weighs heavily.
It's mentally exhausting and emotionally exhausting.
If these last weeks and months, I worry greatly whether they will simply make it.
From the Czech Republic to Northern Ireland, leaders are closing schools.
We fully appreciate that this will be a difficult and worrying news for a lot of people.
Limiting indoor gatherings.
We need to be stricter with ourselves and stricter with our own behaviour.
And imposing curfews.
We cannot get through this if everyone doesn't play their part, doesn't do their bit.
But the measures have been met by a rising tide of opposition.
I want to trust our scientists, not our politicians.
They give us lectures, while it's just technocrats who are leading us.
In Britain, the PM's sticking to a system of lighter, localised lockdowns, despite mounting criticism.
Let's try to avoid the misery of another national lockdown.
But in Manchester and Liverpool, both designated hotspots, there's a mood of anger.
It's Liverpool that seems to get the blunt of it all.
I don't think it's fair for Manchester to be put on the high risk and not London.
The north-south divide is bigger than it's ever been.
And resignation.
As soon as the rules relax again, then it'll come back again.
So as Europe sleepwalks into a long, dark winter, does it have the will to wake up from its second wave nightmare?
The Age and Sydney Morning Herald journo Latika Burke joins us from London. Latika, the numbers look really bad, especially in the north. Are people scared?
That's a difficult question to answer. It varies is kind of really the right answer to say there. Some people, yes, are scared. Some people are doing what they can to avoid contracting the disease. But on the other hand, we have a huge prevalence of coronavirus in the UK. There's been some extraordinary footage coming out from here in central London, also in Liverpool, of people actually going out and partying after 10 p.m, which is when the curfew on bars and restaurants comes into effect. So I think it's really splintering the fear that was there, say, in the first wave when we didn't know so much about the coronavirus then.
It's a big problem any way you cut it. I get that people don't want to go back into lockdown. Nobody likes lockdown. I understand that. But with the numbers surging like they are, what do people want if not lockdown? Like, what sort of solution are they actually looking for that's going to work?
Well, this is a really interesting question, and this is something that the UK is struggling with. Until yesterday, there was political consensus in the UK about going forward, about what measures and restrictions were being imposed. Yesterday, the Labor leader, Keir Starmer, came out and said, no, we want what they're calling a circuit breaker lockdown, which is maybe 2 to 3 weeks over half term. So this would coincide when children are off school. Certainly, there's a growing sense within the media, across the broad media, that we shouldn't be put back into lockdown. If you look at opinion polls, they would say people do support going back into a lockdown, but I prefer to look at people's behaviour, and the behaviour would suggest people are not in any way acting as though they are ready for another lockdown. I think Emmanuel Macron in France put it best yesterday. He actually set out a goal for what they're trying to achieve with their restrictions. He wants to get the caseloads down to a manageable number for the hospital system. Now, we haven't had a target set like that in the UK. All we've heard is about trying to get that reinfection rate, R, back below 1. So when I think we have a clearer idea of what the government's actually striving for, it might then be easier to see what the long-term restrictions are and how sustainable they might be.
Latika, just on a political level, I mean, COVID is a huge test for any leader, but do you think it would be fair to say that Boris Johnson has kind of failed that test?
That's difficult to answer because this story is not yet over. We don't know which leader comes out the best or which country has managed coronavirus best. Certainly the feeling in the UK is that they have lost control. This is something that the Labor Party is very effectively hammering home here. They have had a huge bungle with their test and trace system. So there are certainly perceptions that the government has been incompetent, but keep in mind the UK is leading the vaccine vaccine research. And if the UK comes out with the vaccine, say later this year or next year, which everyone is certainly hoping for, that could change the game in how this eventual story ends.
Latika, given the numbers are so bad right across the continent, has there been any discussion about stopping passengers, planes, flights coming in?
No, not at all. This is one of the huge cultural differences between Australia and Europe. So there were some travel bans initially at the start of the year within Europe, but the government is not trying to ban. In fact, the conversation around that is all going the other way. They've set up a government task force trying to get a sustainable travel industry back on.
And Latika, one final question. How are you handling pubs closing 30 minutes earlier?
Not well, but I'm getting a bit more sleep, which means I can join you today.
And we appreciate it. Thanks so much for speaking with us, Latika.
Pleasure.